Right, so it has been just under a year since the first of my reasonably long series of videos talking about Murder Drones fan comics released, and since then both myself and the creators of these comics have come out with a lot of new things. It was also widely suggested all the way back then that I make this video now, so here it is. An unbiased review of Murder Drones comics 1 year later. For this video, I thought it would be only right to bring back some of the originals that you guys and I found to be the cream of the crop before. So our contestants for today are My Immortal by Jazzstarrlight and voiced in this video by Miguel Sison, aka Toasty Boy VA.
I don't care if it's just a dream.
Murder Drones Unresolved by Sukyo and voiced by Sunnyside VA.
I can't be bored when I'm with you.
And Mafia Drones by It's Vanille's and voiced by Lainey VA.
Oh, bite me.
Oh, with pleasure. Where?
Special shout out to all of these voice actors who have graciously let me use clips from their dubs in this video. A link to all of their channels will be in the description. Now, before I get to the reviews, there are a couple things I would like to talk about. Number 1, we hit 25,000 subscribers, meaning that I am now a quarter of the way to my ultimate goal of getting a YouTube play button. The astute among you may have noticed, however, that the vast majority of that recent growth has come off the back of shorts rather than my long form stuff, because I haven't made any long form stuff in over 2 weeks. The reason behind this is I have been very ill over the last couple weeks and I got a new job. That is all sorted out now though, and videos should be resuming at a usual pace for everyone who wants to hear my soothing voice for more than 60 seconds at a time. But that's enough boring shit, let's get into our first story. Where we last left the journey of our immortal N, he had made his way along with Tessa, Jay and V to the planet of Tungsten-13, the next target of the Solver. Severely depressed at the loss of Uzi's life, he left home base and the others behind, stumbling across Lexi, a worker drone from the torturous conditions of the planet's mining sites. After fending off humans who tried to track her down,
Why not pick on someone your own size?
the pair fly a good distance out into the woods and N takes a much needed nap. His mind plagued with recognition after Lexi donned a suspiciously similar purple wig. Through the night, his dreams are first plagued by cruel recollection of the fateful nights that he was forced to leave Uzi behind. Her hollow corpse not even left to Khan, but instead a bench half buried in the snow. A grieving N is then visited by a memory of Uzi, something he quickly realizes is a dream but takes no less solace in.
I don't care if it's just a dream.
In the meantime though, Jay, disgusted with N's blatant betrayal of the company and disregard for orders of superior officers, attempts to track him down through the night, instead stumbling across Lexi as she attempts to remove the marked for disassembly bracelet around her arm. N manages to wake up just in time to stop Jay from taking a late night snack, but his interaction with Uzi in the dream left his coding somewhat damaged. Jay, having a number of clone bodies, reappears back with Tessa, who she informs about what just happened. Concerned but not deterred by the news, Tessa explains to Jay her real plan for getting N back. Bring back his other old friend. After using his solver abilities somewhat uncontrollably to wipe out another human ambush, N's mouth slips, calling Lexi by Uzi's name and prompting some appropriate questions. N has plenty of his own in response, and Lexi begins sharing about her experience first. As labourers in the mines, the drones were treated arguably worse than they were in the manor, consistently abused and belittled by the humans in charge of them. That is, save for one individual who took a particular liking to Lexi. We never learn her real name, but Lexi decided to call her Sensei, her teacher of everything she needed to escape and the original owner of this hair clip. Now, on to grading. Our criteria for grading these comics will be similar, but not exactly the same as the method used in the past. Each comic is graded 1 through 10 on 3 categories. Number 1. Consistency. Is the story consistent to itself and past volumes? Consistency to the canon show will not be considered here, as I've already talked about it in my previous videos. Writing. Are the new developments for the story a good follow-on from the narrative? Do they make sense for the characters in their situations? This segment also includes the way dialogue is written. And finally, structure. Are the panels put together in an interesting and cohesive way? Is the dialogue easy to follow and placed in a way that it's easy to tell one line from another, thoughts from spoken words, and other things? The consistency between all of the My Immortal episodes is pretty solid, with the only significant changes I'm seeing being some mild improvements in the art, shading, and backgrounds, which does make the whole comic feel very cohesive. There are a few moments of inconsistency within the backgrounds of individual scenes, this being especially prevalent in the dream sequence, but it does not detract much from the comic itself. 9 out of 10. The writing is a little bit more split for this comic though, mostly because I bundled the two aspects of writing together. The story progressing itself is quite good. We make consistent callbacks to small details presented earlier, and it makes the narrative seem very well thought out while leaving plenty of room for development in the future. The characters themselves also have very clear motivations, and their actions are reasonable for the mindsets they're in. I still have some issues with the way N initially reacted to Uzi's death, but her presence in the dream sequence has made up for it somewhat. The problem then lies in how all of this development is shown. learn, namely through the dialogue, some of which feels like it was plucked from my university writing because it is far too formal for these sorts of conversations. The only person who should actually be talking like this should be Jay, not Tessa, not N, and especially not Lexi, the actual child in this scenario. For that reason, I'm going to give the writing of my Immortal a 6 out of 10. The narrative is good, the dialogue is not. And lastly, we have the structure. This one is definitely in the land of almost when it comes to it being very good. The majority of the comic is easy to read with plenty of different angles and a good sense of continuity. However, the speech bubble placement is often less than ideal and has even resulted in some of them having to be numbered, which is a cardinal sin of comic design. It ruins the flow of the page and the story, but here it is only done in small amounts, so we can give it an 8 out of 10. Now let's move on to our next comic, Mafia Drones Unresolved. This comic has only had a few updates over the course of the last year, but each chapter is quite long, so we'll have enough to cover. But first, a quick recap of where we were last time. The comic starts by having a look at what's going on in the colony after the end of episode 8. En and Uzi are in a committed relationship now with plans of marriage in the future, and are also working together under Khan as mechanics in the colony. Khan himself has been spending most of his time recently creating a new body for Nori, that is, a sort of mix of murder drones and worker drone bodies for maximum utility. V has taken on the role of a private investigator and protector for the workers, though she isn't doing a very good job as they keep dying.
Broke into your dorm and killed everyone except you three?
Specifically, drones further away from the main compound keep getting picked off by a feral Jay who is intent only on survival at this point. At the end of our first scene with her, she makes the promise to En and Uzi that you should never make in a story.
Don't worry about me. I'll come back in one piece.
The more pressing issue for our central couple at the moment, though, is the fact that both of their heads are fucked up on some bad shit. Uzi has the remains of Sin and Dole inside of her, as indicated by the 3 colors on her visor instead of 2. En, in the meantime, is getting constant nightmares of Sin coming back to haunt him through Uzi's body.
Where are you going?
His working theory is that Uzi is hiding an internal conflict between her and the Solver from him. The ever-observant Nori has noticed these patterns in both of them even before Uzi starts to realize what's going on and is instantly suspicious of En. She takes multiple attempts at interrogation to him so that she can try and confirm what's going on with her daughter. For the moment though, En and the audience don't have any real answers. After being really awkward once he gets home, En leaves Uzi alone in the room as he heads out to try and find some for his own sake. We then return to the subplot of V, Lizzie and Thad trying to track down Jay. Thanks to his surveillance, Thad has managed to spot a newly formed cave that may be where she is hiding, and the 3 go down to investigate it. Plenty of worker drone bodies are piled up inside the cave, their oil drained almost completely. V scans them and recognizes they are the missing drones from a prior incident. But while she's focusing on that, she neglects to check the rest of the cavern for traps, a mistake that she will end up paying quite a hefty price for. We leave that cliffhanger alone to go to the final chapter, which is everyone's favourite, flashback time. This is a retroactive explanation for Nori's insane ramblings and how she ended up like we see her in episode 7, though the murder drones shown here are not the ones we currently know. On to the rating for this comic, starting with consistency. The story holds very firm to the canon characters and itself, retaining the story that was set up in the first couple of chapters. There is a slight issue here though, as the chapters themselves are beginning to disconnect from each other, moving back and forth in a way that isn't completely natural and suggests that this will be a massive and very long project, something that is probably unwise with this upload schedule. Tsukio is also a very experienced artist with a very well established style, and as such this comic maintains almost perfect consistency through the different characters in terms of art. There is one odd discrepancy I noticed when reading it however. As I like to refrain from going onto Twitter as much as possible, I read all of these comics on Webtoon and Reddit. Chapters 2 and 2.5 on Webtoon have a much lower resolution than the others, which made this harder to read. For comparison, here are the images I've been using throughout the video, and these are the same ones from the Webtoon. While not an error of the comic itself, it is still an oversight in regards to publishing, so that will knock half a point off the score, 7.5 out of 10. The writing is again very solid when looking at the most important aspects of it. The emotion is high in big moments, and that is executed well. The slower moments, however, have some slight oddities in word choice that make it feel a little choppy. That does seem to increase as we get later into the series as well, which is not a great sign, but as of now not majorly disruptive. We also have one scene with numbered speech bubbles, and I'm just not going to get into that anymore.
Fine. I'll stop.
7 out of 10. Finally, the structure. I've already said that Tsukio's art is incredibly well put together, and that has not changed. The panels themselves are very beautiful and almost always flow well. However, looking back at it now, I've spotted a few criticisms I missed the first time around. First off, there are a couple of instances of speech bubbles on either side of the screen during dialogue. Typical comic design dictates that a large space between bubbles indicates that another character is speaking between the two lines of the first character. This is not the case in Unresolved, however, meaning I had to reread a few lines of this dialogue. Secondly, this comic is entirely lacking in one rather important element: establishing shots. Every panel in this comic is either a mid-shot or close-up, with a rare long shot every now and again, but it completely lacks those extreme long shots that communicate where the characters are. This is mostly made up for quite cleverly through the use of dialogue and other contextual clues, but including these shots would make the comic much more dynamic. 7 out of 10. Finally, we have Mafia Drones, and oh lord, there is a lot I haven't talked about for this one. In fact, I've only covered 2 of the 31 chapters in this story. Even more if we count the purely written chapters, which I'm not going to do since I swore off covering those. That leaves us with the story all the way up to chapter 3 of season 2 of the comic. Our setting for this comic is very different to the canon story, with the world of Copper 9 inhabited by a number of key drone families, some made themselves and other the remnants of human families that they used to cater to.
How dare you come into my house and disturb without notice?
The Dormans are a lesser family in this structure, though still one with enough influence that most major players are aware of who Khan, Nori, and Uzi are. Uzi herself is looking to impress the more important murder drone family known as the Skull Drones by creating a new technology in the form of her railgun. Unfortunately for her, this thing sucks, and it accidentally blows up the manor of another family known as the Diamond Drones, killing Jay and majorly pissing off her brother and sister, J2 and J3.
How dare you talk to me like that?
Uzi, seeing the destruction she has caused, tries to hide but gets found out by N, the current leader of the Skull Drones, who chops her hand off. Neither of these two exchange names though, so we get a rather awkward reunion when Uzi shows up to try and forge an alliance between the two families. This does not go well, but our emo grape is granted a lifeline because N's tail has been slowly leaking acid without him noticing since the explosion. He passes out next to Uzi, who drags him into a bed, sedates him, and fixes his tail. In his drugged up state, N mistakes Uzi for an old friend he had and drags her into the bed to cuddle with him. Yes, this is the real plot. From this point forward, N develops a deep attachment to Uzi and swears to protect her as he also accepts the alliance from the Dorman. Uzi will need this protection as J3, the leader of the Diamond Drones and the one responsible for killing the majority of the humans on Copper 9, is constantly trying to hunt her down for killing Jay. Oh, and we also have just a few more characters in this story with their own backstories and such. Let's see here. We have Tessa, Uzi, Nori, Khan, Yeva, Dole, Lizzie, Y, Z, B, J, J2, J3, S, N, Sin, and Alice, and maybe more that I'm missing. That leads me nicely into my review of this comic, starting with the continuity. Surprisingly, for having all of these characters, they are mostly kept quite consistent, if a little one notes due to there being so many of them. What is not kept consistent though is the role of the Dorman house here and Uzi. Everyone seems to recognize who they are instantly, yet the entire opening of the story is Uzi trying to prove that her and her family aren't useless to the murder drones. There is also this strange stipulation that worker drones and murder drones don't mix in a class system way. That is for the most part ignored outside of this moment. It doesn't feel entirely right, and for that reason gets 7 out of 10. The writing will unfortunately not improve that score all that much. Once again, there are way too many characters in this story. It would take hundreds of pages to properly flesh them out and make a cohesive plot, which is just not going to happen here. It's also not helped by the fact that there are no real background characters in this story. En and Uzi are obviously our main focus, but the rest of the cast gets too much time for them to be considered extras. The murder drones naming convention is also not helping here. Having so many characters named by a different letter, and 3 with the same letter, just makes it much harder to follow. The dialogue is also just not good, but that is not without a valid reason. Vanille's, as far as I'm aware, does not speak English as a first language, and as such there are consistent grammatical errors that align with this all the way through. The most common occurrence is the struggle with tense, often using past tense version of words where it's not correct to do so. The fact that this error is due to English's terrible rule set does not excuse it from being a problem though, so I need to give this a 4 out of 10. Finally, we have structure. I will get this out of the way quickly. Every single speech bubble is numbered. Some of them are even numbered incorrectly, and I hate that. The rest of the comic does look much nicer though. Good variety of shots, excellent facial expressions, and it's surprisingly easy to tell the characters apart despite their similar appearances, due to the very consistent drawing of their designs even in different angles. 7 out of 10. And there are all of my ratings for these comics, now updated for 2026. Some parts are better, some are worse, and some haven't changed at all. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.